We had a really great conversation. Brad is a great guy and one of the truly great practitioners of my field. He's in a subgenre of the crime novel, which I guess is the international thriller. One of the most surprising things about this interview is that he told me that Daniel Silva isn't a conservative, which I really got to me. We really have to have Silva on. I really want to ask him about this. Thor is a New York Times best-selling author. He wrote Use of Force, Foreign Agent, Code of Conduct, many more. He's been hailed as the master of thrillers by BookReporter.com and the ultimate thriller writer by Suspense Magazine. His latest book is Spy Master, a continuation of his Scott Harvath series, and is out now. These things, if you pick them up, you're not going to put them down, so they're really great. Here is Brad Thor. Brad Thor, thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you, too. Yeah, you're looking good. And I love the flag. It frames you perfectly.
Yeah, it's very nice. A buddy of mine flew that for me over Abu Ghraib before they closed it in Iraq on the 4th of July many years ago. So it's special.
That's great. Well, let's talk about the things that matter first, namely your new book, Spy Master. They only sent it to me yesterday, so I haven't read this one, but I've read many of your books. You are just among the best. What can I say? You're among the best thriller writers out there. Give us a quick synopsis of the plot.
So synopsis of the plot is war-weary American public, after being through Iraq, Afghanistan, we find out that something is up. And if war is hell, what would you be willing to do to avoid war? Would you be willing to break all the rules, take your best spies, your best operators, and set them loose on the enemy and let the chips fall where they may to avoid actually being dragged into war? And that's kind of the seed from which everything springs.
Very cool. I mean, your stuff is so incredibly readable. I almost sat down to read this, and I thought if I'd start, I'm going to be up till 5 in the morning, so I won't do it.
Thank you.
Now, you're one of, I think of you as one of the great triumvirate of conservative international thriller writers, Daniel Silva, the late Vince Flynn.
Whoa. Silva's not a conservative.
Is he not?
No, Silva's no conservative.
Oh, okay. Well, I take it back.
Unless I am completely wrong about Daniel Silva, and I don't think I am, but I do not think Daniel Silva, from what I understand, is anywhere near being a conservative.
Because he's so pro-Israel. I mean, all that guy does is go around killing the enemies of Israel, which is everybody. Yep. So he kills Dutch people, you know.
Yeah. No, I think, and again, I don't know him personally. I know some people that know him, and I don't mean, whoa, he's not conservative as an insult to him.
Yeah.
Because of course it is a great compliment to be referred to as a conservative. So, but no, I do not think, with all due respect, and I mean that to Daniel Silva, he's a very talented author and an incredible gentleman from everything I've heard, and I have not met him, but my understanding is he is not a conservative.
All right, well then I'll burn his books.
So it's down to 2. It's gone from a triumvirate. Now you're down to 2.
Wait, you got, there was Tom Clancy.
Clancy, yeah. No, Clancy was a conservative.
So what is it about this particular genre within the genre that attracts what we would call politically mature and intelligent people?
I like that a lot. I'm gonna put that on the next book. Politically mature. Andrew, I think it's a belief between that there is good and there is evil, and that you have to make a choice between good and evil. I think, we see a lot of this in the gun debate, right? So if you talk to friends on the left, it's all about how the gun is evil. The person, we don't make the person take responsibility for their actions. It's the evil black rifle or whatever. Whereas on the right, if you listen to Dennis Prager or anybody else, they'll talk about it as a constant battle for each individual to choose between good and evil. So I think the belief that sometimes you have to do difficult things that involve force in the name of good, I think that's, Sebastian Junger is probably one of the most fascinating people I've ever met on the left as far as authors are concerned, because he believes in war. He doesn't like it, but he believes that it is necessary. Right. I had a great dinner with him in New York City once. He and I had both been on a show, Chris Jansing's show on MSNBC, and he and I had a fascinating conversation about war and politics. And I don't think Chris Jansing knew that I was a conservative, because I never got invited back on her show after that. I've seen Sebastian back on after that dinner, and that's okay. Maybe I didn't knock her socks off in my interview. But so why did it attract Clancy? Why did it attract me? I believe that America is the greatest force for good in the history of the world. And I believe a lot of that good has been applied via the U.S. military. I think we've freed more people from oppression via our military than anything in history. So I I think there is a view on the left, again, with my friends on the left, that kind of this Barack Obama, well, every nation thinks they're exceptional. Why
Right.
is America, any different? And I think that predominantly is where the difference lies, in that belief in American exceptionalism, and we should be a force for good and freedom around the world.
Okay. Do you pay for this? Does it cost you? I mean, there has not been.
Absolutely.
I mean, shockingly, there's not been a movie made of any of your books. I don't think.
No. I mean, between the two of us, one of us has had movies made and stuff, and that's you, and it's not me. We came very close with the studio in the last few months. The producers were psyched, huge producers that had big action credits. And they came back to us after setting everything up, and they had run it up to the executive floor, and they go, oh, the executives at this, if I told you the name of the studio, you'd know it right away, said, oh, that Thor guy, all his books are about just killing Muslim terrorists. And it's not true. I have a lot of that but I have a ton of books. I have an equal amount of books that don't have anything to do with Islam. And I always try to balance the bad Muslim guys with a good Muslim person, because that's the ratio. There's more good Muslim people that just want to live in peace and harmony with their Jewish and Christian neighbors and feed their kids and give them a better life than they had, than there are those bad guys. So Hollywood, there's a lot of cowardice, particularly at the studio level.
You think?
In Hollywood, they want to dictate the culture to us. And it's fascinating because my dad recently gave me a huge bestseller, big New York Times bestseller that he found in his library from I think late 80s, early 90s, about how Jewish people created Hollywood. And when you look at the old studio heads and how a lot of them were immigrants to America, these Jewish movie moguls shaped the American dream. They weren't allowed into country clubs, so they created their own clubs. They all voted Republican, and they helped give us some of the great iconic movies of the 40s and really helped shape that American dream. So I'm disappointed. Probably more than disappointed, I'm frustrated, because I know my books would do very, very well. I know I've got a huge audience, and it's just getting beyond that bias in Hollywood. And I'd love to see President Trump turn his ire from kneeling NFL players and Harley Davidson to Hollywood executives. I'd actually contribute to his campaign. So President Trump, if you're listening, I will contribute to your campaign if you focus that laser Twitter account of yours on the studio heads in Hollywood. You will have my full support for the rest of this term, and I'll work to get you elected in 2020.
All right, let us talk about President Trump.
We're breaking news here, Andrew. Yeah. It's going to be the big block on this interview.
Oh man, you have no idea. So let us talk about our esteemed president. You're not a fan, I would say.
No, and in fact, before I came on, I was just thinking about this Harley Davidson thing, where he's threatening to put him out of business with taxes and tariffs. It is amazing to me. We complained throughout Barack Obama's 2 terms that the media never criticized him and his followers never criticized him. Mm-hmm. Well, now we've got a certain group here on our side, right of center, where they refuse to criticize President Trump no matter what he does. So how is threatening to put Harley Davidson out of business with taxes and tariffs any different than Obama picking winners and losers with Solyndra, where he's offering them government-backed loans? It's the flip side of the same coin. And I think we ought to be free as Americans to call out things we disagree with, which has been stunning for me. The tribalism, it's almost like we've got 2 camps on our side now. There are the rabidly pro-Trump people. I don't know any never Trump people. That ended when he won the Republican primary. I mean, I was a Rick Perry guy. Trump won. Down to the end, I didn't think he was going to be a good president. I was worried about a lot of his tendencies. He was pro-assault weapons ban a long time ago. His answers to everything was big government, tried to use eminent domain to squeeze people out of their private property in Atlantic City. There were a lot of warning signs there that thoughtful people should have been able to agree on, yeah, that's troubling. And if those instincts get enacted in office, that could potentially be a problem. So, we talked a little bit off air about, am I running for president? Am I going to do? No, I'm not, because I'd have to be a Republican to primary him. And I don't want anything to do with the Republican Party anymore, because the Republicans told me, Andrew, that if we just gave him the House, things would be different. Then if we just gave him the Senate, then if we could just get a Republican in office, everything would be different. When I let go with that tweet about wanting to run for office and challenge Trump to a debate in the primaries, it was after the $1.3 trillion omnibus got signed. And Republicans told me they would be fiscally conservative. I'm a libertarian, except when it comes to the money and the regulation stuff. And they haven't done it. They lied to me. So, I'm not going to support that anymore. If they in control of Washington can't rein in spending and they're going to leverage, they're going to mortgage my children's future. You and I don't own this country. We are stewards. It's our job to hand this republic to the next generation better than when we found it. $1.3 trillion in this budget and adding to the debt so dramatically. I don't understand it. The same people that will just bow down and say Trump is fantastic are some of the same people that were screaming like stuck pigs, and rightfully so, about Obama's debts and deficits, as well as George Bush's. But now, here we are. And I think it's an absolute travesty that Republicans can't even get a balanced budget. But here we are. We still have Obamacare. There is no wall. There's no infrastructure stuff going. I like tax cuts. That's great. But I don't like tax cuts along with a $1.3 trillion omnibus. It's unsustainable.
What about the Supreme Court, which is just this week has turned out a series of excellent decisions?
Absolutely. So in the Janus decision that just came out today, that is a public employee union member from Illinois, which I fled to move to Nashville. Right. So I love that. But here's my thing. Gorsuch, great pick. Okay. But we're getting to the point now where it's like being on a Navy SEAL team and some guy went in the room first and shot 3 Taliban guys and saved the entire team's life. Okay. Great guy. We like this guy. We want to go out in the field with him again, but he doesn't get a pass for the rest of his time in the SEAL teams. He doesn't get to screw the commander's wife without jeopardy. He doesn't get to steal from the team fund. One good deed, one good action doesn't buy him permission to do whatever he wants going forward. This idea that there shouldn't be due process for people with their firearm rights. There's a lot of stuff that I don't like, but, heaven forbid you say it now. We're so divided even on our side that it's just, I've kind of thrown up my hands with Twitter because it's just this big echo chamber and it's so vitriolic.
It's troubling to see conservatives in the past actually didn't worship their leaders. They were even Reagan. They hounded him throughout his years in office when he didn't follow the conservative line. And there is a lot of that on the Trump side. I'm amazed I think he's doing a terrific job. I really do, except I agree with you about the spending, but I think I'm shocked because I hated the guy. I still don't like the guy, but I think he's doing a good job in certain areas. Yeah.
And yes, I agree. And, I'm all in the call balls and strikes, right? So I was on Fox with Dana Perino when ISIS was just getting crushed and I'm like, great job. And then he sent out a tweet, Brad Thor and Dana Perino, thank you for saying great job. And I'm like, that's the fair thing to do. The first strike he did on Syria, the very targeted missile strike was excellent. So he can do good things, but, he's playing to this 35-40% base of his. And the job of a leader is not just to support a small group. He represents all of us in the United States. And I really don't see any effort to bring us together. He's almost like a wrestling, a WWE guy, where unless he's demonizing and vilifying somebody else, he can't articulate himself. So it's always got to be, I stand in opposition to this. The Democrats suck, this, that, the other thing, instead of, you've got an incredible bully pulpit there. And I think he should be working harder, particularly with as vitriolic as things are, to bring the country together. Doesn't mean you can't advance an agenda, but he's not really a leader. You can't run the country like you do a family grocery store. You're the top of the org chart, maybe in the Trump organization, and you can tell people what to do, tote that barge, lift that bale. That's not really leadership. That is dictating as the boss. You can't fire me, okay? I'm a citizen of this country. You can't fire me, and you can't fire my Democratic neighbor. You should be working as a leader to move the country forward. And Andrew, you know this. There's so much more that unites us than divides us. And yet here we are becoming further and further divided. And guess what? The shoe's going to be on the other foot. There's going to be a Democrat in there, and the Democrats are going to have control of both houses of Congress. And we will have nobody to blame but ourselves because we didn't behave better while Trump was in office and Republicans controlled everything. The
well,
chickens, as Reverend Wright says, are going to come home to roost.
I have to ask you this. You left Chicago for Nashville.
Yep.
Nashville is one of my favorite cities in the world. I published with Thomas Nelson down there for a while. I just love that town. Are you glad you did it?
Absolutely. It's 4 years ago this month that we did it. You ask my children why we moved, and they'll say freedom. Listen, Illinois' tax and broadband, they had a sugar tax. If the states are laboratories of democracy, Illinois is a meth lab. Okay, they have even worse bond ratings than you do in California. It costs more to borrow money in Illinois, and the problem is that their constant answer for the failures of their economic policies is we didn't go big enough. We didn't spend enough money. And so when you and I were kids, we'd see these cartoons where there are two characters marooned on a desert island and they're starving, and one looks at the other and suddenly he looks like a pork chop with eyes and hands. Illinois politicians saw me and my family as ATMs with eyes and hands. And I just didn't want to, I was paying higher and higher property taxes. There was more and more violence creeping into our neighborhood. I had to tell the babysitter, don't take the kids to the beach. Don't take them to the zoo. Don't go to the park. And I thought, I'm enabling this. And I would do talk radio in Chicago and people would attack me on Twitter. You're going to move. You should stay and fight. You're not a fighter. And I'd say, at what point was it okay for Tina to leave Ike Turner? At what point? So.
Brad Thor, one of the masters of the thriller genre. Spy Master is the new book. Thank you very much for coming on. I know a lot of people who are listening are going to disagree with you about Trump, but
okay.
I also know you're a man of conscience, and I think that's the important thing. Everybody's got to state their case.
Terrific. Thank you, my friend.
Great to see you, Brad.